Hey, it's Vas here from Aussie RC Playground and welcome to another unboxing. Today we're going to be looking at the ARRMA Senton 6S BLX. Now this is a 60 mile an hour 6S capable 4-wheel drive brushless short course truck. And I know that's probably a bit of a mouthful, but there is quite a lot of RC on offer here for your dollar. If you don't believe me, you can check out my ARRMA Senton V1 running videos and review. The Senton is the red and black truck that you see back there. I've had that pretty much since the day of release. I absolutely beat the living snot out of it and loved every minute of it. And the truck actually stood up to most of my punishment. With the exception of a couple of minor things when I was really being silly with it, the truck actually did very, very well. And I have no doubt that this new version, which is the V3, will do the exact same thing. Now, ARRMA have changed a couple of things, namely the body. The mold of the body is actually quite different. Color scheme, of course, has changed as well. The thickness of the body has also changed. Electrics compared to the V1, well, obviously in the V2s, ARRMA fixed that issue and they brought out some really solid, powerful brushless system in these cars. The servo has remained pretty much the same because, to be honest, I've never really had a problem with the stock steering servos on these cars, despite the fact that some people seem to argue differently. But as long as you set your dual rates correctly, you shouldn't have any issues at all. So, ready to run. You only need batteries and charger to get this guy on the tarmac and having some fun with it. And of course, it is fully waterproof. So, let's get rid of that box and let's have a look at the truck itself. First thing in my hand here is the Tactic TTX 300, which is a radio I've reviewed plenty of times in the past. 4 AA's, good feel in the hand, plenty of range. I've never had an issue with these radios thus far. Does have the optional toggle switch here for a third channel, which you'll need to read instructions for to set that up for your liking. Steering trim, throttle trim, and of course steering dual rates. Very important that you set your steering dual rates, as I said. That way you don't overstress the servo and the servo's not trying to turn wheels that can't physically turn any more beyond a certain point. If you're not entirely sure what I'm referring to, please be sure to check out the video description. I'll have a link in there to an RC hot tip video that I did a while ago, and it will explain just in a few short minutes exactly how to set your steering dual rates. Now, bag of goodies. ARRMA have been very good at supplying quite a lot of stuff with these particular vehicles. I'm going to empty out the contents here. First thing in my hand is, of course, the tool bag. These tool bags have obviously been very handy over the years. You get a big cross wrench to allow you to take your wheels off. You've also got a smaller cross wrench to take out all the little nuts and bolts that the truck has inside. And of course, you've got Allen keys to do all the hex screws that it comes with. There's also a bag with a couple of XT90 connectors for your batteries. These cars, of course, come with XT90 connectors as standard on the ESCs, and ARRMA have been very kind in supplying some extra connectors for you to obviously solder onto your batteries. Now, there's also a bag here with some extra pistons for your shocks. If you're the type of person that likes to tinker and adjust and, you know, experiment with different suspension setups, they give you some extra pistons for you to sort of play around with your shock suspension setup and, I don't know, adjust it to your driving style or terrain that you're running on. The high-speed pinion gear, this pinion should take the truck to the claimed 60 miles an hour as printed on the box. So far so good. Every ARRMA car that I've received and tested with their optional pinions, I've been able to hit the targeted speed. So I have no doubt that this truck will do it as well, as long as of course it doesn't flip on its roof or something like that. But there are plenty of ventilation holes on the body, as you'll see very shortly. Now, the other thing that they include in here is, of course, speed chart, and also gives you some dimensions for your batteries and some recommendations for the type of battery that you want to have. So kind of cool. They give you miles an hour on one side, kilometers on the other. Very good that they include that. And of course the old trusty user manual. I'll try and get it out of the bag here as quickly as I can. This manual is actually quite thick, but that is because it is written in a couple of different languages, I believe, and it also covers pretty much all the cars in their range. I think I heard someone say something about, you know, why do they do all the cars in one manual? Well, that's because a lot of these cars share the exact same parts, and it just kind of makes sense to include it all in one manual rather than doing, you know, 5 different manuals for these particular vehicles. So to me, it's just a cost-cutting thing, and it really doesn't hurt that you've actually got parts for pretty much every model. And if you want to convert one model to the other, well, you know, you've already got all the parts listed on here as well. So I certainly don't mind that, and it's a very comprehensive manual with instructions on how to set up your radio, how to tune your ESC, how to work on the cars. There's part numbers for everything. Good on ARRMA for doing that. All right, so the truck itself, let's bring this up to the camera as per normal. And I'll give you the old spin around. Now you can see straight away that this has a matte finish on the body, and you can see a bunch of vents that they've cut out already, so to allow some airflow. There's also some on the front here as well. So this should prevent the truck from parachuting. It's not going to stop it from parachuting, but it should help it in not being, you know, as bad parachuting. Now, a really cool thing with this body is that, you know, it obviously has a matte finish, so that's something that's becoming a little bit more and more common, I'm noticing, with a lot of RCs, not just with ARRMA, but I've seen a few other companies, or one or two other companies actually do this sort of thing, so very nice. But one of the coolest things they've done with this body is they've actually made it really thick, much like what you'll find on the Outcast and the Nero Big Rock and the Phazon as well. They've actually made this really nice and tough and thick, as opposed to the original body, which actually felt quite flimsy, and it was really reliant on the roll cage and, you know, the structure of the truck itself underneath to support the body. Whilst this one here, I think the body will actually stand out to some abuse before it starts to crack and, you know, kind of mess up. So one of the really cool things that I highly encourage a lot of other companies to do is to include these tapes and these little protectors that ARRMA put on these bodies to stop it from rubbing out, and obviously you end up with a clear body all over again. So very, very cool to see that on this truck. You can see that they've actually put some on the wheel wells here. Obviously when you come down on your suspension, the tire is going to rub on the body and scrape out all that paint. So they've put protectors in there to obviously prevent the paint from rubbing off. So very well done. Really liking this body. I know that the style of it may be an acquired taste, but I think, first of all, durability wise, I think it's going to be fantastic. And I like the style of it. I think it looks a little bit different. So hopefully it'll work quite well. Now, the truck itself, this is a very familiar sight, of course. If you've seen a lot of the other ARRMA unboxings, there's really nothing here that should surprise you as far as the overall layout. However, there are a couple of things here. One I'm a little bit disappointed with, and one I'm actually a little bit surprised as to why they've done this way. And there's a couple of other things that they've changed on this truck that I'll run you through, which is kind of neither here nor there, but they've just changed it. Okay, so first thing that we're going to be talking about are these tires, and I've already reported back to ARRMA and told them that, you know, these tires, they're not really very good. They really struggle for grip on tarmac, at least from my experience with them, and there's really not a specific surface that I found them to be really usable. They seem to be more of a general purpose tire, but at the same time, because of the rubber compound is so hard and the foams inside are so soft, they're really concave. It's like the walls of the tire are so thick that the tire itself inside concaves, and you don't have a lot of grip. I found that with the V1, whenever I was going into a corner and I just simply tapped the brake, the thing would just spin out straight away. There was no grip on these tires, and the slightest little thing that you did to the truck to kind of set it off, it would just spin out. It would also not steer straight in a straight line when you gun it off a line. It would always sort of twitch and carry on. Now, once I replaced the tires on the Senton, that sort of went away, and I was able to drive the truck a lot better. Of course, I did make a couple of wrong choices. Namely, I put Badlands on some buggy tires, and the truck wanted to tip over a lot because these trucks are a little bit top heavy. But once I actually found a tire that worked well on the truck, I was actually really, really happy with the handling characteristics of it. So I hope that ARRMA takes some of this advice and go back and change out these tires, because they've done improvements on the truck on pretty much all other aspects, and all other weak points they've made improvements on. I think now the next one should really have better tires on here. I don't know if they really need to change the rims. I did have a couple of rims crack on my V1. I don't know if too many people have been breaking these rims, but the tires definitely need to go and change, and hopefully they'll do that in the future. So that's one thing that I hope they change. Suspension wise, whoever's tuning the shocks over at ARRMA HQ, you know, they're doing an extremely good job, because I'm yet to find one of their vehicles that just doesn't have good suspension, especially on these 1/8 scales. The 10 scales can be a little bit hit and miss, but these 1/8 scales, the suspension on this feels absolutely sublime. Really nice and soft, well dampened, well balanced. I have no doubt that the suspension on this will work quite well. However, one of the things that they've changed on this truck, and this is one thing that I'm actually quite surprised with, is that they have not included sway bars. On the V1, it has sway bars included and pre-mounted front and rear. There are no sway bars on this truck at all. Now, I don't know if they've made that change to compensate for the tyres. Maybe the sway bars were working against the tyres because of the lack of grip. Maybe now it handles a little bit better with these stock tyres. I don't know. But I will be running it as is, and we'll find out, you know, if this actually works, if this combination actually works. But very interesting that, you know, they've pretty much included sway bars on every other vehicle that they have in their range, not in this particular one. Moving on to the servo mount, which is one of the things that they've changed on this truck, is of course they've beefed it up, made it a little bit chunkier, and that should stop it from flexing when you're obviously steering the vehicle. 150 amp BLX ESC, which is capable of 6S, of course, and you've got your 4074, I believe, is the motor size, which is a 2050 kV brushless motor. Plenty of power in these cars, and no doubt about that. New redesigned servo box to allow for bigger receivers, and of course you got the new battery tray, which will allow you to put quite tall batteries in here with this little slider thing that they got going on. If I can take this out of the way just quickly, I'll show you on here. So you can actually move that up and down, and that allows you to put a couple of different size batteries in here. So if you are running 2.2S or 2.3S, you can even run them on top of each other now, because not only do they have a strap going across the battery, they also have this great big one that goes long ways along the battery. So this stops the batteries from sliding out from under each other and moving about. And of course they've got this little thing here for your balance lead, which I have requested for them to raise up a little bit to make it a bit easier to access. Unfortunately, it's a little bit on the hard side of things to do, so I don't think they'll be changing that. At least not in the next version or two. Who knows, maybe they might finally bite the bullet and make that improvement later on down the track. You've got droop screws all the way around on the truck, so on the A-arms, so you can actually lower the suspension of this quite easily and adjust it accordingly if you want to do speed runs with it. All that sort of thing is available there for you. The shocks themselves, just going back to the suspension quickly, these are all brand new shocks. 4mm shock shafts, new bodies. I believe they're using a different spring on this as well, but that's just a belief. It may not be actual fact. What is fact though, and something that I wasn't expecting with these particular vehicles, is that they've changed out the shock caps from aluminium as in the previous versions, and they're now using plastic. Now I don't know if that is a weight saving thing that they've gone for, or perhaps a cost cutting thing. Because they've made so many other improvements on the truck, they figured, well, you know, we got to save a little bit of money here and there, and maybe they've opted for the plastic shock caps for that reason. They do seem to have little bleeder holes on here, so this should be nice and easy for you to tune and refill with oil. But the plastic shock caps, you know, I do wonder if that is going to create a problem and they're actually going to pop off with some hard landings. Front and rear bumpers, as per usual, very nice and tough. A little bit of give here and there, so these should provide plenty of protection for the truck. One interesting thing about the rear bumper though, compared to the V1, they've done away with the extra plastic that was hanging out on either side. Now I actually took mine out soon after I got it because I found that it was actually coming off and it was kind of in the way. It even rubbed against the rear tire, I think, from memory. So I'm happy to see that they have actually not included that with this particular truck. Also, I think it has something to do with the body as well, because the body sits up a little bit higher now. I think those extra plastics were there to kind of help support the previous body, and I don't really think this one needs it, nor would it work with it given the new mold. You've got nice kind of beefed up little Nerf bars, I think they're called, on either side of the truck. You have CVDs on the front for your drive shafts, standard dog bones in the rear. You also have aluminium hinge pin braces on the front of the front A-arms. There is aluminium hinge pin brace on the rear of the rear A-arm. It's a little bit hard to see, and I won't be able to show it on camera, but it's got a plastic cover over the top of it. So at first glance you look, oh no, they've taken out the aluminium brace. No, it's still there. It's just really hard to see. But it is definitely there. Improved bulkheads, both front and rear. So these have actually got that webbing on the inside of the bulkhead to give it a little bit of strength. So if you did take a bit of a nasty hit on the shock tower and stuff like that, it's less likely to snap off. I think some people may have had that issue in the past, and ARRMA obviously gone back and kind of redesigned that, give it a little bit more extra strength. Chassis braces are also redesigned a little bit. In the previous versions, there was a little locking nut on the base of the chassis brace, and then the screw that came through the chassis would go into that little locking nut and hold everything down. But that, of course, weakened the chassis brace because you've got to take out a bunch of plastic for that nut to go in. So now what they've done is they've bolted the screw straight into the chassis brace itself. So this gives it a little bit more strength. I believe the plastic composition of these braces is slightly different as well, so to make it a bit more tougher. That's my understanding, but don't quote me on that 100%. So definitely, you know, they're trying to do things to make these trucks a little bit better, and they seem to do that every year or so. They make these improvements, which is fantastic to see. Now, of course, you've got standard pillow bowl style suspension on the front, which makes it really easy to adjust your camber. Tow width adjustable via the steering links as per normal. You do have fixed tow positions in the rear, so it's kind of hard to adjust tow there unless, of course, you change out the hinge pin braces. So a little bit of extra work. Good thing is these diffs are fairly easy to access and all of that sort of thing, which I've shown in the past with some of my RC pit stop videos. If you need to tune these diffs, as long as you can remove the bumpers fairly quickly, getting access to the diffs, I think, is only like 4 or 5 screws or 6 screws or something like that. Really easy to get access to them. You don't have to disassemble the entire truck to kind of get in there. Really, really easy to do. So that is, I think, pretty much everything that I need to cover off on this truck. As you can see, it's got a great big roll cage on here. This is really designed for bashing. The truck itself is not very light, and I think that's testament to the fact that, you know, it has a 6S brushless system in here, and these things can absolutely handle this power. You've got a all steel drivetrain, just like in the Creighton, the Talion, and of course the Typhon and the Outcast. So no doubt these trucks, you know, they can take an absolute beating, and don't be scared to run them on 6S, because I certainly will. And I'll be testing out to see if I can, of course, hit that 60 miles an hour top speed. So I'm going to leave this unboxing here. If, of course, you enjoyed it, please be sure to give it a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe if you're new, and of course hit that notification bell so that you're up to speed and up to date with all the new videos I post up on the channel. I'm hoping to get this guy out on the dirt very, very soon. We're looking at getting a few nice days ahead. So yeah, as soon as I'm done sort of doing some shots here in the studio, I'll be taking this one out to the BMX track and putting it to the test. So be sure to tune in for that. Don't forget to check out the video description. As I said earlier, I'll have links in there to the truck, as well as links to my social media pages, including Patreon. And yeah, be sure to hit that like button, all the good stuff. Thank you all very much for watching. And as always, I'll be speaking to you all next time.